Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Screen Smash. What about your eyebrows, Louis?
They're as strong as The Rock. Oddly enough, the only other guy that actually does a...
I can only do the one.
Look at it.
I can't do the other one for some reason. Anyways, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Screen Smash, CouchSoup's video game podcast, where we talk about all things in and around the world of video gaming. You can catch us every Friday on the YouTubes, on CouchSoup, YouTube, that is. And you can catch us a day early if you're a CouchSoup Spud member on the website, and listen to us anywhere you find podcasts. Pretty much anywhere and everywhere. So thank you for joining me, everyone. Tonight I have Nick McKay.
Hi.
Hi, Nick. I was going to not introduce Louis last, but so Louis Reza.
Intro sound.
There it is. And we have our special guest tonight, Alex McCumbers, joining us.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Hello. Thank you for joining us. All right. So to everyone out there, tonight we're going to get into some pretty interesting topics that Alex and I decided we were going to get talking about. But to start us off, we're going to have him tell us a little bit about who he is, what he does. Then we're going to talk about difficult games from the perspective of a filthy casual, aka Louis. And then we're going to get into it on niche games. Niche.
I've always said niche, but
niche. I say niche normally, and for some reason I came out niche that time. Because, on the spot. So we're going to talk about niche games and are some of our favorites, as well as just what makes a niche game fun and special. I did it again. But first, let's get started with you, Alex. Why are you here?
You're talking about your niece's games.
Your niece games. Nissen. The Nissen games.
You got nieces and they're playing games. Best recommendations, probably. No, so I'm Alex McCumbers. I've been a big fan of games for a long time now, and I've been kind of stubbornly pursuing like a career in games, like a lot of my colleagues and such. And so I studied writing because it's like the one thing I know I can do pretty well. And I learned how to do that. I grew up, born and raised in West Virginia. Most of my family are very much like bluegrass musicians. They're crafters and carpenters and such. And I was always the guy who just really liked Mario and PlayStation and stuff. And so I pursued video games my entire life. And I got into writing just kind of generally to keep myself sharp because I knew I wanted to be a writer in some point. And so I was giving a talk about Minecraft and its use in education because I thought you could use it as a tool to reach kids and teach them literature, which I did fairly successfully, but it didn't quite work out how I wanted. But regardless, whenever I was giving that presentation, one of the folks and one of my classmates approached me about joining a magazine. And so I was on this little magazine called Giga Geek Magazine, where I was writing about like Pokemon Mega Fusions and a game I'll mention later, The Forgotten City, right when it came out as a Skyrim mod. I talked about that. I did some interviews that were pretty cool. And then eventually I ended up at Marooners Rock. I was an editor there. Shout outs to my buddy Andrew, who's just a fantastic person. And then eventually it got to the point where I was like, I kind of want to do this just on my own and have my own thing and be able to like make these major decisions that I wanted to make and really kind of push things as far as I could take it. And so me and a college friend, Zach Snyder, started Forever Classic Games because he really liked podcasts at the time. And that podcast eventually turned into a whole website. And so now I am thankful and very privileged in that sense. I work in games by day at Stride PR. My entire job is telling people about games and sharing them with others. And so I get to do that. And then at night, I'll write about some of the games that I don't get to touch at Stride, right? So it's been a really fun ride. I've been in a couple books. I was in the SNES Omnibus collections. Brett Weiss, one of his other books as well. The 100 Greatest Video Games from 1988 to something. I don't know. There's 2 or 3 of those. I'm in that one for Chrono Trigger. But I just try to write about many things as I can and play as many games as I can. And I'm just here for the ride. I love games and I love the people that make them. And so I try to exude that in kind of everything I do.
Very cool. Actually, very similar to my own journey, except for the writing part. I tend to talk more than I write. And that's why I do a podcast. Because I spend a lot of my early years working like at GameStop and like helping customers. And I live and breathe video games and talk to people about video games. Even now I go to the store and I'm that weird creeper guy. Like, you're talking about God of War? I know about God of War. Let me talk about it with you.
Here's the ones you want to play. You want to play the second one? Definitely. No, it's interesting because every job I've had has been kind of connected into what I do now in a small fashion. Like I worked in production for television, and then I was a radio reporter journalist for a while too. And so all the skills I learned in radio, I then applied to podcasting because I still wanted to do it. And now I consider myself pretty decent at interviews and just sitting down and having chats with people about whatever they're passionate about. I've covered so many things.
I've literally been faking it till I make it.
That's what you do. Step one accomplished.
That's right.
It's so much fun. When I think and do any sort of reflection on like where I come from and where I've been and where I'm hopefully going, like it's so cool. All the little things I've met, or all the little folks that I've met along the way, their projects, their passions. I just love sharing that stuff. And so any opportunity I get to further that is just fun for me. And the fact that I get to do it as a career, I pay the bills with it. Like it's such a blessing. It's really good.
That's awesome. I want to throw out a little anecdote here that I think was really cool because with doing this podcast and like working with CouchSoup as I do, and like I've been a part of the internal team that has been building the website out and the coverage that we're doing. And I was a part of the like process of reaching out and trying to get like contacts for game codes and game reviews. And oddly enough, you and I had actually connected in that method before I knew who you were. You were just that guy on the other end of the email for a PR contact at one point in time. And then when we had met to chat about your appearance on the show, that's where it clicked with me. I was like, wait a minute, I know you.
Same guy.
Like, you're the one I've talked to about game codes before. Like, oh, snap.
As far as I know, I'm the only Alex McCumbers that's active on the internet. And so I'm very easy to find and kind of easy to figure out who's who.
That was an interesting little moment that I was just like, oh, okay, we've actually worked together technically. Yeah. So that was fun
thing because you start meeting the people that only through emails at like a con or say this podcast and stuff. And those are the people that I think you like really remember, are the folks you get to like meet. And I've met so many incredible people in this industry. And one of the reasons I'm at where I'm at now with Stride is because I really like the people that work there. And so that was one of the main drivers of like, oh, I should apply to them. And thankfully I got in, and now I'm like rocking it with some of my colleagues and get to work on all sorts of cool stuff.
It's awesome. Very, very cool. All right. So now that we've gotten to know you a little bit better, Alex, I do already know kind of like where your mindset is for this evening. And we've got some interesting things to get into. But I'm going to pass Louis over the soapbox. Here you go, Louis. Get ready.
Oh, over there.
I know, we're on the corner.
Yeah.
So Louis here is going to tell us about how it's been for him playing difficult games as a filthy casual.
Recently, I came across, so I listen to music literally all day while I'm at work. I got these great, the Bone Conductor headphones. I suggest them, especially if you're ADHD like me. They fucking work. They keep you completely like focused on everything. My colleagues, everybody's been like, you're a lot calmer now, which says a lot. Anyway, I listen to music all day long, and I've been like on this kind of like rampage with like kind of like cyberpunk, weird kind of trip hop kind of stuff. And then this song came on, and I fell in love immediately, and I had to know what the heck, who it was, what it was from. And it was this guy, the Toxic Avenger. And it said it was from a game called Fury, Furi. And I was like, what the hell is this? It's got beautiful graphics. Like the song is amazing. And I had to check it out. I think within hearing the song and then buying the game and trying it out for myself was about maybe 20 hours. And I don't do that. I usually research for a while, wait for it to come out on Steam at a cheaper price or something like that. I was like, nah, I'm just doing this now. So I got it, tried it out. It's kind of like a like I don't know what you would call it. I guess like a boss crawl.
Yeah. I have this game. I've played it.
So goddamn good. I think it's what you call a boss crawl. It's literally just boss. That's all you're doing. And it's definitely like it's got like its learning curves. The whole thing is getting the beats, learning how to actually fight them, learning when to block, when to dodge, all that kind of stuff. And I hate that stuff. I've been on here multiple times talking about how trash those games are, and you're bad for liking them.
We had an entire episode discussing the hard games and how Louis isn't about them.
I hate them, but this one, I guess,
with fury.
I guess, man, like there was just that perfect combination. It was a perfect storm of like the music, how beautiful it looked. What I liked about it very specifically was that the challenge never felt like it was out of my hands. One thing that I've discovered playing this game is when you have a boss that is virtually impossible, like it has like 2 or 3 moves that if it does those 3 moves one after another, you're gonna die. That's it. That's just how it happens. It takes it out of your hands. It takes it away from you. Like I didn't fail because I'm bad. I failed because you're impossible, you dick. So I started learning that with this game, and I started like looking at, I'm probably going to do an article on this once I'm finished with it, but I started recognizing like how each different boss made me really think, and really made me think outside the box, and try to tackle them from a different perspective. And sometimes inevitably when you get to that point, you're like, all right, I'm going to look on the internet, and there you go, looking it up, and it's like, oh, if I go left, I kept going right. Something stupid and obvious. But still, I never felt like it was taking away from me. I never felt like I was a bad gamer. I felt like I could do this. I just need to give it one more shot. And there was a beautiful kind of a rhythm to that. So when I died, I would just like, okay, one more time. Let's go. And I would get more hype about it. And I never felt bad. That's when like I started thinking about like, what was it about those old school games that I just could not get into, like Dark Souls? I think that's what it was. It felt like it was taking away from it, because you have to start from this point over here, get all the way, crawl everywhere. And before you can open up the goddamn gate that makes it easy to go over here, that one skeleton comes out, and then you're dead, and you have to do the whole goddamn thing again. And like you're not really learning anything, because you got like 12 different little guys that do nothing. They're just, cannon fodder that if they hit you, it's going to do massive damage. But like, it takes away from the experience. It made me feel like I got to grind again so that I could do this, and I have to, blah, 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 blah. And that's why I didn't like Dark Souls. And then I started thinking, well, why did I like Bloodborne? Because Bloodborne is essentially the same thing. The difference was that with Bloodborne, I started to really, really appreciate that world. The world was so goddamn good that I didn't care that I was dying. I was too busy sightseeing. I'm like, yeah. Oh, I'm dead. Cool. That was still beautiful. I didn't really mind.
The gothic horror of Bloodborne is worth the time in that game alone.
It's so much is. And like, if you want to, you can really study it. I got to a point where with Bloodborne, when I played it alone, because Dan and I have been playing it a couple times together, and that is fun. That's great. I'll admit that's a whole new level. But playing it alone, I got to a point where I was just watching tutorials on how to beat each boss. And I was like, I don't really care. And I would go in, do it. I'm like, cool. Okay, back to the pretty part. Yay. I was more happy in the world. And that leads me all to Lies of P. I love this game. It feels like finally, and that's why I said from the perspective of the filthy casual, it feels like us filthy casuals finally have a game that we can hold ourselves to. One of the things that apart from it's got its own incredible story, I'm fully intrigued. Like the first level up to the first boss, I was a little kind of iffy, like, they didn't teach you really how to dodge. They don't really teach you what the blocking does. They don't really teach you much, which, everybody's always saying, the hand holding.
That's classic Souls formula, though, where like you're meant to learn by doing kind of thing. Exactly.
But the problem that I saw was that when I got into like the leaderboards and stuff like that, where I saw like people are like, okay, how do I beat this guy? And it's just toxicity and all this, just like, well, just fucking learn, bro. Like,
get good, dude.
Yes, yeah.
I've never seen that before, honestly. Whenever I look at guides online, I've never seen terrible toxicity.
I went to Reddit, so that's my fault.
Oh yeah, that's your problem.
Yeah, dude. There's your problem.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the poisonous swamp that Miyazaki's been putting in these games. It's just Reddit.
Yeah. And so determining there was a couple of helpful people and a couple of little tips and things that I never thought I could do. But what I really like about this game is that I don't feel like I'm being too cheated out. Like I just beat the cop, the big spider cop thing. That it got iffy at the end there. I was like, I just can't beat that final phase. I just can't beat it. I just can't. Who the hell can beat that? He does it. Just a hit. There we go. 2 hours in. I killed him. This is such a great game.
I just beat that boss before getting on this call for this podcast.
Yeah, I beat it last night, and I don't know. It feels like. I think that what a lot of those difficult games that for like the hardcore gamers who have the time and have the energy and have the presence of playing these over and over again and really, really appreciate that exact kind of style. Like I'm not going to get mad at a friend of mine for the first time to play a JRPG if they don't know that you have to equip everything. You have to this, you have to that. Like, why the hell would I be mad at them? I'm just like, no. I'm going to try to explain it to you. You never played this before. So I think that it's important for people to understand that these games really are not built for everybody. So if somebody talks shit about them, it's not really that they're talking shit about them, it's that they're not used to it. Try to reach over to the aisle, try to bring people into it. It's like this game to me is so beautiful, is so well utilized. I changed all my settings. I changed them. You can do that. You can't do that in any other of the old games because they're like, no, we're going to make run. You have to stomp your foot. And then we're going to make a block. You have to call your mom a bitch. And like it's this weird scheme where it's like, okay, if you want to go fast, you have to hold it. Like you have to hold the controller like that. Now run, go. That's all you do.
Button mapping is so important in video games.
It is so important.
Yeah,
it's
dude.
So important. And so like I don't know. I feel like this is finally a game that is challenging enough that I stopped looking at tutorials. I actually am looking forward whenever I get to a point that I don't know what to do, that I really have to think about it, and I might look up a tip, but I'm not going to look up anything else anymore.
It's the formula is finally clicking for you.
I guess so.
What makes these games what they are is that you're in that process now where the sense of discovery that you are like, I'm going to face this enemy. I don't know what it's going to do. I don't know what I'm going to get into, and I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I'm going to learn. And if I fail, I'm going to adjust because I failed and adapt. And then when you overcome, you're like, I did it. Like it's that huge like endorphin release when you overcome the challenge on your own.
That's very interesting. What's that?
What's fascinating about your journey here too is that Fury is very much a controlled environment. It's very much like certain actions that you can do, and all the bosses are built around that. And that's just really good game design. And so basically what you've done is you've learned in a controlled space how to adapt on the fly. And you've carried that into Lies of P, which is fascinating to see.
Like, don't get me wrong. There's still, like I said, like that fucking boss. There are certain points where I'm like, I still like, even when I hit, I get that last final blow, I'm still like, I'm not satisfied. I feel like I was still kind of cheated. There's sometimes certain bosses, certain levels where I still feel like it wasn't difficult because I was being challenged. It was difficult because it was difficult. It was just the purpose of like, I got lucky this one time. And I remember when I had 3 games to play, you have to get lucky to beat this secret boss so you can get the ultimate weapon. That was okay because, I had only 3 hours to beat one game that I owned. I don't mind playing that game for 50 hours to get one boss. The problem is that there are so many goddamn games. There are so many things happening. And I'm just like, I'm playing Lies of P and I'm like, I still need to beat Fury. I still need to even try Starfield. I still need to God damn
great conundrum. Yeah, my approach anymore is just to let the releases come and go and play whatever I think is cool at the time. I think I'm done chasing these things.
I just don't read anything on the subject because I don't want anything spoiled. I'm like, nope, don't look.
I want to come around on that exact subject because it is so true right now. But I also want to give Nick a chance. I'm curious Nick, do you even mess around with some of like the more challenging games, these hard games like this?
I don't. I actually wrote an article about this, I think earlier this year, about challenging video games and how I hate like super difficult video games. Like I've played maybe 4 hours of Dark Souls 2, and that's all my experience with the Souls games. And I don't go anywhere near them because I don't like that. Play. Like that game that's difficult.
I got 2 minutes in. Don't feel bad.
I don't. Yeah, but I love like space and like, you know, like exploring new planets and aliens and things like that. So I heard that Returnal was super, super challenging. But I was like, I have to try this. I have to at least try this. And I played it for 7 hours. And I got stuck on that first boss and it just killed me. I got to a point where I was like, I can't do this. I uninstalled the game. And then a couple of weeks later, I was like, let me just try this again. And I just got into it. I resonated with it. And I started figuring out the game. And what I loved about Returnal was it was a very challenging game, but it felt like the game really rewarded you for your perseverance. So every time you died, it really did feel like I was learning something. And there was, you know, items that you would keep after your death. You know, obviously it's a roguelike, so you go right back to the beginning. And it just felt like the game rewarded me for like my perseverance, for like saying, you just keep going. You're going to get it. You're going to get it. And I mean, now that game, I don't want to say it's trivial for me, but it's like I can like easily play the game now. Like it's not that much of a challenge anymore. And I just feel like I've been rewarded for that perseverance. And I can't see myself having an experience with something like Dark Souls. Because it's like my biggest gripe with those things is where you fight enemies that are just like these bullet sponge tanky enemies that like you've got like 2 or 3 enemies you got to take out and they just take forever to take down. Like give me like dozens of enemies, like 30, 40 enemies that are like one-shot kills. Like that's more fun for me. That sense of accomplishment of like getting like so many kills really quickly is so much more fun than focusing on like 2 guys. Like I cannot play, you guys might hate me for saying this, I cannot play the Resident Evil games because all of those enemies are just so tanky. Like I remember playing RE7 and like upgrading the handgun ammo to like the upgraded one and headshotting one of those black gooey creature things. Headshotting it like 3 times and it didn't go down, and I was playing it on easy. I was like, nah, that was like I rage quit. I uninstalled the game.
Now, being I cannot do this. Resident Evil fanboy here, I need to at least say Resident Evil 7 is the worst offender of that.
Yeah, it's not consistent.
7 definitely is the worst of that because the older games, they're not like that. The only tanks in the old games are the bosses. And then you've got the newer games like the games. I love the old games. And then I was going to mention Resident Evil 2 earlier because Louis was talking about the hard games being hard for the sake of hard, especially when you beat a boss and you're like, I don't feel satisfied with that. It makes me think of the mechanic that Resident Evil 2 had where they purposely programmed it that you would be running out of bullets every time you killed something. Like they made it so the enemy or zombies would take longer to kill depending on how many bullets you had. Just to make it always feel like you're on the wire at all times, which made that game remake or the original? RE2 remake had that.
Really? Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, RE2 remake had it programmed where some zombies would just arbitrarily take more bullets to kill based on how many bullets you had.
I remember speedrunners being pretty frustrated about that one in particular.
Because it would make it where, you know, your average zombie might take 2, maybe 3 headshots and kill it. And then the next one takes 8 for some reason. And you've got 1 bullet left. And you're like, why? It's because you're left with 1 bullet. That's the point. To make you think, oh, shit.
See, I hate that because that kind of...
It works for a horror game, though.
It kind of defeats the purpose of the survival horror experience.
But
like,
makes
that's
you
the thing.
feel
Like
you're always
survival horror is like all about
you learn.
Resource management and things. Like it's
going for a feeling and not for like a set of rules that the world and the game abides by at all times, which a lot of people can find frustrating or like disruptive. And that's probably what they were going for. But still, there's a reason why like certain people have that reaction to Resident Evil 2.
But then you can headshot a zombie with a shotgun and watch their skull and brains explode everywhere. That's pretty consistent. There's no
nothing makes
like
me
the
braver
switching.
in a horror game than a shotgun. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, dude.
Absolutely. Like I
It
can see
must
both.
have weapon.
Yeah. Oh God. As soon as I get one, I'm just like, okay, now it's on, bitches.
Mhm.
That's a real easy way to turn me like into a scared little nothing is when I shoot something with a shotgun unfazed. I'm like, oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it.
Sorry.
As long as it makes at least space for me, then it's fine. But
That's my point. Yeah. Even if it doesn't get phased, but it pushes it back a little, I'm like, okay, at least there's a reaction. When they're just like, nope, I'm like, I'm so sorry. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. No, but I can see your like whole feel on that. Absolutely. Like I heard, I watched a incredible YouTube that was talking about specifically Resident Evil 2 and how the subversion of like so much of the tropes was incredible. That like, for example, being able to shoot something in the head and it doesn't go down. They're like, yeah, that's the point. Like Dan is talking about. Until we learned that the mechanics are also so that it can bring you down all your ammo. Then I'm like, that's just mean. That's just bully. That's kicking dirt in my sandwich, you dick. But the other thing that I liked about that one was that the subversion, like if you play the original, you know when the liquor is supposed to come out, and then you get to that point, and it still puts the camera outside of the thing, and you're like, oh, here we go, no liquor, and then you go into that room, and you know the liquor, no liquor, and it's like.
All the subversion of expectations.
Yeah, so you're getting
so
that
cool.
like like that I can see is a great mechanic instead of actually doing this.
Well,
I would
Capcom's been
rather
doing that
have
for ages, even with Resident Evil 1 remake.
Absolutely. I would rather have the burden of suspense and not have it play out than have a shitty jump scare. I would rather have that, honestly.
100%, dude.
See, this is why I don't like Outlast.
I like Outlast, but I can only play it for like an hour at a time. Then I'm like, all right, that's.
I like the theming of it, but I never could finish it or really vibed with it. I don't like the horror games where you can't fight back at least a little bit.
This is what I call the hidey horror.
Yeah,
I don't like the hidey horror
those.
games.
That's literally what I'm going to talk about later.
I know that's why.
great.
Like I like Alien Isolation, but I also adore that universe. So it's kind of like what Nick was saying is sometimes it's just a theming, right? Like there's plenty of games that exist that I don't think are very good that I bought just because I like the thing that they're about. Like I own the newest Super Robot Wars, which is on Steam. 100%. I got it on the Steam Deck, and it's cool that it exists and is in English and was sold in our market. That's not a very good video game, as far as I can tell. I've played the first 4 or 5 maps, but I got it because I liked robots, and I just wanted to see the robots do a cool shooty. So I don't know. I totally get it, dude. I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things that can bring you into games. Like I'm not a big fan of fighting games, but when I saw the Injustice games were being made, I love like DC and like that concept was brilliant. And I got so into Injustice and then so into Mortal Kombat. And I was like, I've tried Street Fighter. I don't like it. I've tried Tekken. I like love it for like 2 hours and then it's boring. So it's exactly right. I mean, that's a great sort of way to phrase it. Is like, it's the theming of it.
I just think that it's kind of interesting that we like I talked about, and I like the way that you brought it up, that I went from Fury and understanding liking a different mechanic from this thing and then applying that to the others, and that we're still talking about it even if it has to do with like, you know, like a genre or it has to do with like a specific platform. And I don't know, I just think that there are some games that can nail it. And I think that that's why we always remember them as the classics. Like for me, the first time I played Final Fantasy VII, I was like, I hated the concept of I have to wait. Well, I got a sword. I want to run around. I want to slash shit. What happened? Why do I gotta wait? I don't know why I turned. I gotta wait here. What's happening? Come on, guys. God damn. I don't know why I turned into a New Yorker. But anyway, like you know, I played that game and I fell in love with it, and I was a hardcore JRPG fan my entire childhood, because that game was just that good. Even the bad ones, I was like, that's great. What do you mean Chrono Cross sucks? It's yeah. So Trigger was the great one. Cross was fine. You have 80 characters. You got 90 billion characters. I mean,
I don't know what's going on, but it's cool. I vibe with beach fantasy. That's neat.
You know,
there's a game I want to throw out for you, Louis, that I think might be along the same lines if you haven't played it. Have you played Death's Door?
Probably
That
not.
sounds familiar.
It's got great boss fights in it that are pretty similar to Fury.
Zelda-esque Souls-like. Where you play as a little
plays like a Zelda
bird.
game. It's got a lot of cool combat, and I think you would vibe with it.
It's very cool. It's very cool.
Yeah, that was on PS Plus recently. I've got it on my list to play. I'm keen to give it a try.
Yeah,
it's a good
Tunic.
one.
Tunic is very similar.
That's on my list.
Really
for things
cool.
to play
Tunic is really
at some point.
Dude,
Yeah, they're both like Zelda-esque games, but with Souls-like mechanics.
Oh, you know what? I did see this. It's on my list. I just haven't bought it yet. Yeah, no.
Death's Door. I think you would jive with that pretty hard.
So I want to try to bring it around real quick because I want to bring it back to Lies of P because I've also been playing Lies of P. We've been hyped for this game for a while. It's oddly enough because Louis isn't huge on the hard games or the Souls likes, but we did episodes of the show ages ago. We talked about like some of our most hyped games for the year, and Louis actually threw out Lies of P, and I was like, I was gonna say Lies of P, and I'm like, why Lies of P, Louis? You don't like those games? He's like, but this looks really cool because I know Louis is all about the themes and the mood, and Liza P nails that same kind of like gothic horror that Bloodborne did so great. And I can see where it worked for Louis because it doesn't hold your hand in any way. It's definitely a Souls-like, but it feels a little bit more approachable for someone who's not as hardcore, and it gives you a lot more to the player. Like you get more options. Like there's a lot of ways to build out the character and like ways to upgrade and make yourself stronger, but the game still feels challenging even though it's a single player only, which I'm a little sad about because I would have loved to co-op that game with Louis like we're doing with Bloodborne.
Yep.
Oh man, that would have been great.
I mean, the big benefit is it's Bloodborne, but it runs at 60 frames, right?
That's 100% what it is. It's Bloodborne, but it's new and it's fresh 60 FPS. Like it's not quite as cryptic as Bloodborne is, which it makes it a little bit, more digestible that the characters actually speak plain English sometimes and you understand what they're saying. But it still has that weirdness and that mood and that creepiness. And I have to ask Louis, did you talk to the weeping woman?
Already solved that.
Okay. So you did do the thing where you found the baby and did you see her hand?
No, I didn't see it. You can see it?
Oh, yeah, you can see her hand. I wanted to mention this because I noticed as I did the thing where I found her baby and I brought it back to her, and you actually see her hand come out from the window, and it's just pure, like, unadulterated creepiness. And I'm like, oh, this is good.
No,
I haven't seen that yet. I just started my Pinocchio journey.
Because Liza P does exactly what Bloodborne did.
Yeah, I was going to say, Liza P, you play as Pinocchio, right?
Yeah, you're Pinocchio.
He's the P.
I saw so many. I want to mention this. I saw so many people talking shit about you got to be some femboy walking around with like, I thought it was a chick. I was like, this is a hot chick. No, it's a guy. Like,
it's a hot guy.
He's the boy. He's a literal boy. I'm going to be a real boy. Like, guys.
I have a serious question about this game, though, guys.
Yeah.
Can you lie in the game and use his nose as a weapon?
You can lie, but nothing happens to his nose, unfortunately.
That's a genius.
I wish you could. You just be like, neural. You turn into that dude from One Piece with a shark face.
Someone needs to mod that now.
That is going to be the ultimate weapon. Is Liza P weapon?
That's the first mod.
Every time he just runs into battle and he's like, "You look really pretty today." What?
The Nexus mods get
you
on.
You can lie to the weeping woman too about her baby. Like it gives you the option. Lie about the baby.
Yeah, like the whole thing is about like you have to choose when to lie. You can use the lies to actually be good. Like her, like you can lie for like a white lie, so that they feel better about themselves, or you can like tell the bad truth, or you have to tell the truth at certain points. Like it's a really, really, and that's the point. It's so nuanced. It's so good. It's not as simple as like the lie or good. Like no. It actually really makes you think. It really makes you like feel. The record. I don't know if you heard the song that she gives you, Dan.
Yeah,
but like I at first I like sit down and I'm like, oh god, it's 4 minutes. I have to sit here for 4 minutes. Oh,
yeah, but you can move around and you can do stuff while you listen to it too. But also, yeah.
But still, it was so beautiful. My heart was singing along with this beautiful voice and this gorgeous song. Oh my god! Like every mechanic.
Listening to the music gives P humanity. It makes him become more of a person and less of a puppet. and there's so much more nuance there, and like it plays a little bit into like the laws of robotics with the puppets.
I've heard about this
because the whole thing is like the puppets have rules of like they're not supposed to kill, they're not supposed to hurt people, and they're not supposed to lie. Like puppets can't lie. You are the only puppet that can lie. That's a big premise in the game. So it gets real deep into like the psychology, the sociology, the economics. Like it's pretty intense.
Oh, massively in the economics. It's all about class as well. Like I'm so interested in figuring out where this goes. I hate, and I still to this day, I hate farming. And this game, I don't mind. I put on my music. I put it on full blast because like Dan is saying, there's so much customization. Like you know, I like to make a new weapon, try it out, but I can't try it out with one guy. I got to try it out with 70. So I can find a path where I can farm and I make new weapons, go and try all this stuff out. And while I'm just listening to my own death metal, because I'm not looking for anything new. Nobody's going to say anything when I'm killing them all again. But man, I am absolutely completely enthralled by this game. And I haven't felt this way since I played Bloodborne the first time. But like I said, with Bloodborne, it got to the point where I was like, I don't really care about the gameplay too much. It got a little stale for me after a while. This one, I actually really appreciate. I really, really do. I don't know. This is different. This is different.
It's amazing how as soon as something is compared or inspired by Bloodborne, how that immediately keys in certain people. Because this has happened to me a bunch of times. Like I'll be at a show or something and be like, oh, we were really into Bloodborne. And so we wanted to, you know, do a thing based on that. And I'm like, all right, now you have my attention. Because if you like Bloodborne, you're probably making something I'm going to like. And while you were talking about that, I was looking about one of my favorite Bloodborne likes is a 2D game called Vigil the Longest Night, which come to find out was removed for some reason. There's a whole story. Go look it up. But that was a cool game that I really liked. And apparently you can't play it anymore.
I might have Vigil actually.
Yeah, well, don't delete it.
There's a new game coming out too that there's a early access or beta for it. It's called The Last Faith. It's basically Castlevania meets Bloodborne. It's a Castlevania.
I've been watching the
Bloodborne
gifts for that one.
I played the early access of it. It's freaking brutal, and it's like it feels like Castlevania, but it also feels like Bloodborne. It's like
I live for that shit. Give me one of those.
Speaking of all of the craziness, this will perfectly roll into our primary topic of the evening, and that's niche games, because that's literally pretty much all we've been talking about. To start us off with niche games, I want to specify that like niche can be a more of a blanket term to refer to just any game is a niche. In and itself is a niche. Any type of genre or type of game, shooters are a niche, RPGs are a niche. But when we're talking about more of like the small, harder to find kind of like diamonds in the rough niches here, especially the more not so well known. And I'm going to go ahead and give this to you, Alex, to give us a chance to kind of like start off, because I know you've got a lot of thoughts on the subject. So I'm going to go ahead and let you roll us into this.
Yeah, so you kind of hit the nail on the head, right? I mean, niche often is kind of like the really minute definitions of like a genre. So for me, for a lot of things that I see people being like, I really liked this one particular movement mechanic in Super Mario Sunshine, and I went and made A Hat in Time, which is a lovely little 3D platformer.
Right.
And so that's the sort of things that I really vibe with, because I love the retro scenes. And I think there's still a lot to be said about those consoles and those design philosophies. And so oftentimes the reason I get to these niche games is somebody in those genre like wheelhouses, people who adore card games, for example. And then they say, hey, this one has risen to the surface. I think you really need to play Inscription for, card games. And like, these are the sorts of conversations that I adore. I haven't yet, but I will. And so like, I'm just kind of obsessed with discovering things. And so I do a lot of like Steam page surfing. I mean, obviously I do a bunch of that for work. I'm always on, Twitter or Google looking for various content pieces. And so I just kind of stumble upon these things. And I've also been building my YouTube algorithm for the past like probably 20 years. And so I just have this awesome subscription list, and I use that account only for viewing now. but I can let the algorithm feed me stuff, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to feed me something interesting because I've just tailored it that well. And so a lot of the games that I find like that. And it's also kind of like harrowing because there's so many circles of games that have mass piles of niche titles that I would probably like that I just don't look at because I don't have the time. I'm like this with board games. I think board games are super cool and they're having this incredible renaissance. I can't get in board games. I'm a video game guy. I can only be into like one thing in a major sense, right? Like I can't be a music guy. I need a music guy or person, right? Like somebody needs to tell me what's cool. And the same thing for film. Like I'm a very like easy to please film person because I know what I like, but I don't think about like, you know, all that goes into making a film as much. But for games, I'm constantly thinking about that. So it takes niche things to really capture my attention and capture my interest, which is why difficult games often vibe with me because they make you focus, right? I can't dingle around my phone when I'm playing Elden Ring. I just can't do it because that's a game that demands your attention. Yeah. And so there's platforms like itch.io that are just filled with incredible, cool experiences that I have no way of like cracking the surface on unless I find, you know, somebody on YouTube who's saying like, oh, here's my favorite itch games and why. And then that has to capture my attention. So there's so many different areas to find niche games. I think RPG Maker is kind of the classic, like, oh, here's this really cool indie title that is now available on everything because it made waves in the RPG Maker space. And then for horror games, there's people like Dread XP who put together these little collections and then they do publishing and some development themselves. And so it all kind of culminates in find the people that you kind of vibe with and then figure out what they're talking about the loudest. Because oftentimes that's how I discover these things. And that's the best way to just kind of like be interested in variety. Because I don't know about you guys, but I just like variety. And so I just kind of jump into areas where there are passionate people. I hang out with a lot of fighting game players in Minnesota right now, and I help put on these fighting game tournaments. And so they're into very specific things, whether it's the hardware they're playing on, the sticks that they use to make the magic happen, or how they're presenting it, or some of them even have fan games. Like there's this incredible fan game called TMNT Cross Justice League Turbo. It is an incredible free game that blows my mind. Like some of the artists that are featured in that game worked on the classic SNK stuff. Some of the musicians worked on this other thing. They have comic artists from the Turtles comics actually like giving things to them to put in this game. And it's incredible. And so I just love stuff like that. The ROM hacking communities, the translators, like all of that is just so interesting to me.
Absolutely. I really kind of resonate with that. Like I always get a little weirded out when I find out that there's like this game that doesn't have a translation or something. I'm just like, but there's modders. But then again, that's, you know, also kind of like being like, oh, you can't make a call from this area. I'm like, but it's a cell phone. I know I'm ignorant. I know I'm stupid, but I you know, like there's so like you'd be more surprised at the amount of the things that are available than the things that aren't available, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I don't know, that's a really good way of thinking about it. I like that because I had trouble thinking of like, what's a niche game that I like? I couldn't come up with anything.
A bunch of them.
Like, you know, I guess Fury could kind of be considered that kind of a thing.
Sure, yeah.
The best that I came up with personally, I'll just go ahead and throw mine out there early, is I really, really like fairy tale games. I've discovered that think of Liza P, for example. Yeah. There's this there's a game that was actually called, I believe it was called not Fairy Tale, but oh my god, I can't remember.
PS3 game, scissors on the cover, something Faye something Faye Fables.
Fable, I think, yeah, something like that. Like you get these little like you have to beat these little demon thingies, and the more that you beat, like you can get them as their powers, and then you can use them to like you summon them. There's a guy who's a detective and a girl who's no. I know. Yeah,
I know it's not. There's like soul hackers and stuff.
Folklore.
Was it
Folklore?
Okay,
Yes,
I've heard
Folklore.
people talk of that. Yeah, cool.
Okay.
It was so good. I never beat the damn thing, but it was so good. And
That's
right
why I
now
have these conversations, because somebody can be like, "Oh, I'll find it
Bang.
somehow, some way. I will find it."
Like I don't know what it is. I guess it's that like I've always grown up with like big fables and stuff like that. Like I'm massively into like Wizard of Oz, the what's the one with the Cheshire Cat and all that, the Alice in Wonderland. That was one of the book I forgot was one of my favorite books growing up. I love those kinds of things.
Did you play the Alice game, Louis?
I love the Alice game. I'm playing it again.
Okay.
It's like one of those that I had to go back to. I also have to go back to as an adult because I didn't get all of the themes, and it's really, really hard to understand. When they talk like this, they have to try it to say, Wait, what the fuck did that woman say? What?
A patch just came through like a day or two ago because I put it on my Steam Deck because I've never played it, and the Steam Deck surprisingly plays games from that era really well. And so I was like casually loading up my patches for the day. And Alice popped up, and I was like, "Whoa, hey, whoa, wait, what are y'all doing?" Probably making it run better on the Steam Deck, but it's cool that like those games exist in a place like Steam, right? Like we can still find them.
Yeah, but like the where I was gonna go with it was for me it was the story is what made it niche. If you could put something into a fantasy like a Brothers Grimm type of thing, for some reason I immediately am on board for that. And even Little Nightmares, that doesn't really have a whole lot to go off of. Like you have to pay attention to understand the story. But god damn, is it so beautiful? It's creepy, it's depressing, but I think I love falling into worlds. I love escaping this reality sucks. This is bad. I don't know why all my friends are like, let's get the new FIFA. I'm like,
I want to hang out with gross butcher folks. That's what I want.
Yeah.
I cannot think of Little Nightmares without thinking of Limbo, and how Limbo is one of my favorite games of all time.
Limbo is one of those too. What was the other one? The one with the mind control. Inside. Wow, there we go.
Yeah,
that's what I was actually going to talk about. Yeah.
Inside.
Oh man, like I love those. Like, give me a world, give me something, give me way more than just the surface level. I hate the surface level. I want to be gone from this reality, and that's my thing. But hearing what you're talking about, I'm just kind of oh my god, like that resonates so deep. Finding that little bit.
I shy away from AAA games more often than not. Like the last time I played a Call of Duty was probably just for fun because a friend played it competitively. Like there's very little of the AAA space that I find like intellectually stimulating in a lot of areas. And so I look for these things, right? Because I want to have fun. And I've seen a lot of things. So me having fun is like kind of hard sometimes. I sit and look at my Steam library or my shelf and go, what am I even going to do today? And sometimes I don't do anything, and that's a problem. But I love that we live in a world where there are so many different types of games, and I deeply appreciate products like this podcast, like all of the YouTube videos that specifically are made to help people discover things. Because I think sharing is really important when it comes to niche titles.
Yeah, especially for the things that you wouldn't know about otherwise. Like there's so many games that I've become like infatuated with that if somebody hadn't told me about it, or if I hadn't heard about it from somebody else, that I wouldn't have ever even looked at it or paid any attention to it. And I'm like you, Alex, where like I love going down these rabbit holes and just like finding my way to things that I wouldn't have found otherwise. And then you make discoveries about these things, these games that push things in different directions than you normally get in like the AAA space. And like I'm like not gonna lie, I play mostly the higher end games more just for like being on top of the pulse of the gaming world and things. But a lot of times I'm also, digging into like I have a wish list of over 200 games on Steam, most of which are games that I'm just like, that looks interesting. I have to wish list it so I remember that it's there, and I have to come back to it or look at it. Like that comes back to like that Last Faith game that I mentioned earlier, and how unique that initially looked to me. I'm like, I need to remember that one. So that's what I end up doing. And I'm going to jump in there and say that, like, because I'm just the massive, ridiculous, weird nerd that I am, one of my favorite niche games that I love playing are the Earth Defense Force games.
Okay. Yep.
If you don't know these games, they're incredibly ridiculous Japanese nightmares of a game that, like, they're made bad on purpose. And it's part of the fun of what makes them great.
It's like a Muso game with guns and bugs.
Sort of, yeah. Like I
pitch for those.
It's a like man versus monster. You're just one soldier with a machine gun and a rocket launcher running around these giant cityscapes that are full of giant ants and spiders and bugs and spaceships and kaiju and whatever other random shit they decide to throw in there. And you're literally fighting thousands of them, completely impossible odds. Everything is super janky. Everything is like beyond absurd. The dialogue is beyond bad, but on purpose to like hysterically, laughably bad. And I love it. I love it. I can't get enough of it. It's so dumb. And I love every second of it because this is, you know, coming from someone who grew up watching Godzilla. And I'm like, oh, I'm like one of the little foot soldiers running around, you know, trying to shoot at Godzilla meaninglessly, you know.
What's their life like? Bad.
Not great. And then especially when you play those games on hard and it gets to the point where you get blown up by an explosion and then you just start ragdolling till you're dead. You can't even do anything about it.
I would love for that series to put out an official Godzilla or Kong or Gamera thing.
I wish.
So cool.
I wish.
Oh my god!
Because I eat up all of that. Like I can't not get on anything that's got Godzilla or Kong in it.
This is how I knew Dan was good people when we first was like, "Hey, is anybody interested in joining our podcast?" I knew immediately because you had a little Godzilla in your profile. I'm like, I'm gonna vibe with this guy. I love Godzilla. I love Monster Hunter. I love monsters and robots and. There's so many little things around this room that are just cool.
Yeah, I jump on any of those games and like I miss the old like Godzilla games, the old melee beat 'em up games to the point where like there's a spiritual successor to those games.
I have news for you.
What's it called? I have them.
Gigabash is
Gigabash has got the Godzilla expansion.
Yep, it's fun. And then there's another one called, I know that there's one that's got Ultraman, like the Netflix Ultramans in it. Yeah. Is the one you're thinking of.
I know of Gigabash, and I saw the Godzilla expansion. And I'm like, ooh, I need this. I'm going to need to play this. There's a new Godzilla game coming to Steam in November too. It's Voxel Godzilla. It's a tactics game like Into the Breach, but it's Godzilla.
I'm going to send you a thing on Discord that I need you to look at later. So fighting game communities do this a lot where they just really like the art style and they'll make the game like competitive and viable. There's a whole group of them that do this in the 16-bit space, which is how I discovered that Turtles game. Well, I don't know if this is any good, but it's a project that I wholeheartedly support with my full chest. There is a Godzilla Save the Earth Melee, which basically takes all of that GameCube Wii era Godzilla games.
I have that game.
Cobble them all together. Make it competitive and cool, and then re-release it as a fan thingy. I love that stuff.
Because I have Godzilla Save the Earth for the original Xbox.
Yeah, check out that Twitter. They're doing some pretty wacko stuff over there, and I appreciate it.
I need definitely to look at that then. Sweet. Now that is getting very niche. Getting the kaiju battler.
You know who goes even deeper though? We should probably have Nick give us some niche stuff.
Give a chance.
Yeah. Okay. My niche, like we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. But like one of my favorite niches of games is like the FPS survival horror games, like Outlast. Like the first game is really cool. Outlast 2 is one of my like all-time favorite games. I think it's just so creepy, so scary, so like thrilling. And I love that. There's so many cool examples of them as well. There's the Amnesia games, which are also terrifying. Alien Isolation, which we touched on, which is like genuinely just a brilliant game.
It's so pretty.
I'm such a huge fan of like that like late 2000s like slasher movie genre film. So I feel like survival horror FPS games kind of immerse you in that sort of experience. And I think that's kind of what I vibe with. But I love the idea of like not being able to attack any enemies and you just have to run and hide. And coming up with unique ways to kind of scare people into that is, I think, why Outlast 2 is so good. So that's kind of the mainstream niche that I have. But another niche that I really love, which I've gotten into this year. So when I got my PlayStation 5, which I got earlier this year, I really started taking advantage of PlayStation Plus's new game catalog. They finally have a competitor to Game Pass. And I've just been like ticking off the big releases like Returnal, the Ratchet and Clanks, those games. But I've also kind of been looking at like the thumbnails of some games and checking like, okay, that one kind of looks interesting. And there's this whole niche, which is kind of like this, it's like experimental short indie game kind of things. So it's like a short film you'd see at a film festival where it's like just, we're going to take a wild idea and run with it. So some of the games that I've played this year that I thought were really cool is like, obviously, we talked about Little Nightmares and Inside, which I just finished, I think, like day before yesterday, which is phenomenal. But games like, I don't know if you guys have heard of a game called Bound.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's like this hexagonal art style, and you play as a ballerina, and she's doing like ballet moves to keep this corruption away. It's like a quick 2-hour experience, but it's just such a cool, unique game to play. It's like, I mean, there's not really too much to the gameplay, but it's such a cool like experience. It's so different. And then there was another indie game called Lake that was released, I think, like 2 years ago or so, where you play as like a postman. Like you play as this woman who moves to like her small town.
I know that one. That was on Game Pass for a bit.
That's like the main gameplay, but you talk to people.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it's like you just create like relationships and stuff. Like it's cool. It's different. It's like completely. Like just you can play your AAA crazy games and then you just log off from that for a second and just play like these cool experimental indie games. I love that. So if you have PlayStation Plus game catalog and Game Pass, just go and look at like those interesting little indie titles, because there's like, I think like you were saying, Alex, there's these diamonds in the rough that just kind of you can just find within these little niches of things. It's such a cool experience. Another game that I'm playing is kind of experimental. It's so funny, Louis, that you said you're playing Fury, because the name, like I recognized the name. I was like, where have I seen this name? And I had to wiki it now. It's made by the Game Bakers. That's the devs.
Yep.
And I'm currently playing another one of their games, which is called Haven.
Yep.
It's like their first PS5 game. I was like, what a coincidence. I just put that in there. But that's another like experimental kind of indie game-ish type of thing.
The game is
they're apparently a really good
concept.
indie developer. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I was
They're really nice
just
and
researching them. They've got some really cool little indie games that they've put out. But I like that. Like I love experimental films as well, where they take like a wild, outlandish kind of concept and run with it. And games like Inside that I finished recently, that was just, I remember playing this. I was like, oh, it's a cool platformer. I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. And then you get into the lab and the big amalgam of body parts. And I was just, the last 40 minutes of the game, I played the whole 40 minutes like this. It was just crazy. I was like, what the fuck is going on?
The ending of that game is like historical.
But it's like, that's it. Like Little Nightmares.
I love a game that surprises you.
crazy.
Everhood was a big one for me.
Check out Somerville.
No, but I think I
Somerville
edited a review for that.
It wasn't made by the guy who made Inside, but it was like the same team. Like they had something to do with them. But like Somerville is very much in that vein of Inside Limbo. It's very creepy. It's very mysterious. It's very weird. It takes like 4, maybe 5 hours to beat, I think.
That one.
It's crazy.
The one that's got the like big tree spirit thing that's recent. Starts with a B. It's like Bound or
Bramble.
Bramble.
Oh, Bramble. Okay. Yep,
Bramble looks really cool. I haven't played it, but every time I see a screenshot from it, I'm like, whoa. Yeah. That's on my list of things to play.
I'm so glad that I added to the Game Pass, because I definitely need to check that out when I get a chance.
That's on PlayStation, like the free, whatever it's called. It's expensive. It's too expensive. Everything is too expensive.
I'm gonna wait till I get tired of Liza P, and when that's probably gonna be is like when I'm like at the last final boss, and I don't know that, and I'm just like, all right, you know what? I've been at this long enough. I'm just gonna fuck off, and then I find out 2 years later, oh, I had one guy left. I do that a lot. That's why I don't want to get into Elden Ring.
Elden Ring. I had never beat a Souls game. And I was like, this is the one. It's happening. I'm hell or high water. I'm beating it. And I used every dirty trick in the book, but I did it.
Yeah.
Stupid fire giant. I fought him for like 17 hours.
Bloodborne for me was the game that I played the bejesus out of when it first came out. Then I fell off of it. Then I went back to it a bunch of times. And then I finally beat it when I co-opted it with a friend. Like me and a friend just went hard, and they were like, we are beating this game. We are getting all the trophies, and we beat the DLC, and we platinumed them. It was
That's awesome.
I think the game that made me, like, the only one that I remember that I left for a bit, and then when I came back, it was just on a whim. I was just like, I don't even know why I left it. Was Revengeance. I don't know why. It was the dog. I kind of left, and I was like, it's an okay game.
I remember you mentioning that before.
Yeah, and then I went back and I beat the dog. I'm like, this is the greatest game that has ever gamed ever. Like
Metal Gear, got it.
Yeah, Metal Gear Revengeance. I could not put it down. I've played it like 3 times ever since. It's so stupid good.
That's an interesting pivot. There's a lot of niche, really cool titles that like didn't get a whole lot of attention whenever they came out, right? So like games like Metal Gear Revengeance specifically had like this great new resurgence because all these kids on TikTok started playing it and thought the president was really funny. So like that happens all the time with me too. I love looking at games in its entirety, which is also a problem. But I usually start that history from like NES because anything prior to that, I'm just not interested in unless it's some cool like homebrew Atari thing. But like there are so many games that I discover even on just regular Nintendo from people just talking about it. There's homebrew projects out there by people like 8-Bit Legit and Retrotainment. They're 8. It's the same people. 8-Bit Legit, I think, is their publishing label, but they bring a bunch of NES homebrews to consoles, and that's just cool as hell to me. Like I love that stuff.
Sadly, we're gonna have to wrap it up. We've been going a while here, and I know there's so much more I still want to get into. And like I almost just kind of like segued right into more of it, but we're going long. And we're going to have to close it out. But this has been fantastic. Thank you, Alex, so much for joining us this evening. You've been a fantastic guest. You'll have to come back and we'll like pick up where we left off.
Oh, sure.
Part 2.
Oh, yeah.
And then, I know this is the beauty of this and having these conversations. And like we're learning from each other. Hopefully we're teaching our audience some new things. You guys heard some great games that you might be like, oh, I got to go check this out now because I heard these guys talking about it. That's just the biggest joy that we get, with this. But then we have to wrap it up. We're going long. So thank you, Alex, again. Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Nick, for joining us. This is it. Screen Smash for this evening. We'll see you guys all next week and have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.